What's up, Playmates? Welcome to the Psychonauts Podcast, episode number 2. And I'm here with my dear friend Paige Gray. And we have lots of existential conversations on the phone all the time. And she's one of the most brilliant people I've ever spoken with, and very esoteric, loves that rabbit hole. And she's also trans and understands my experience and what I'm dealing with probably better than most people out there. And that seems to be so intricately intertwined in this whole awakening process that it's quite fascinating, especially for us to speak about it between each other. So I thought you guys would enjoy it too. When did you first start having these spiritual revelations or esoteric revelations?
Interestingly enough, when it started transition,
Really?
that's when things really started sort of lining up in different ways for me. It was really quite something.
So how long has it been for you?
I've been transitioning now, so been going through an awakening, which is odd that they both coincided. 6 years, just a little more than 6 years.
Oh, wow. Fascinating. Right on.
Yeah.
Anything before that? Or did you know before that? Did you know when you were younger or?
Oh, I've always had some sort of an idea that something was going on, but I was very pragmatic about things. I needed, empirical proof of anything. It had to line up with what we knew basically scientifically, If you couldn't reconcile it scientifically, if you didn't have hard-based evidence, then it was just woo-woo. It wasn't anything that I would consider. So I would throw things away. I would dismiss them. But it's only when I really started. The one thing that I realized was I know deep in myself, in my body, that I'm a different.
Ladies and gentlemen, due to operating difficulties, there's been...
Well, I always knew that I was different than what I never identified in this body. And so that was the thing for me. And I never really could figure it out why. I just never felt right. I felt like I was a different being, that I was someone else that was inhabiting the body. And that to me really was an awakening. But see, because I didn't have scientific answers to it. There's nothing. And that's why people have a difficulty sort of accepting trans people too, is because, well, there really isn't a lot of things, a lot of basis for it. We're just hoping that they will accept us for who we say we are,
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and that's really all there's to it. And that's what I figured out, is when I couldn't explain why I'm trans, I realized there was a lot of other things that we couldn't explain either, but they are there. It happens, and that we don't always need the answers to explore something.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So we can explore things without having full knowledge. We don't need to connect all the dots right away. And sometimes, once we get where we were going, the dots start falling in place and lining up and making a lot more sense.
Definitely. I saw a really good meme the other day about describing what transgender is. And recently writing the book, I was trying to describe in my best ability to describe what trans is. But this meme really pegged it in my mind, because a lot of people can relate. But it said, imagine that you've got a rock in your shoe. So, and you're trying to walk around and live around in Earth and go about day-to-day things. But every time you take that step, you feel that rock in your shoe. So it kind of like colors every single experience, because no matter how great the experience or how bad the experience or whatever your experience is, you can't stop thinking about that rock that's in your shoe and the discomfort that it's causing you. And I was like, bam, that is it. That's the trans thing. It's like this ever pervasive thought that just doesn't go away, and it's so heartbreaking. It's like it's the most heartbreaking thought, you know. At least it was for me, and
Yeah.
and then finally, you know, you just decide that I gotta have to get this rock out of my shoe. It doesn't. I mean, whatever it costs, whatever the cost of taking off my shoe to get this rock out, that's the cost, because I can't live one more day like this. Yeah.
And that's it. That's exactly it. It's unbearable. You know,
Yeah.
when they treated trans people back in the 50s and even earlier, they didn't have any answers for it. All they knew was that by treating people, it helped them. It helped us. It helped us, you know, it took away a lot of that burden that we were carrying. You know, we were able to live in the way that we felt, you know, deep down inside, that, you know, this is who I am. And we're
Yeah.
able to express ourselves in that way, then we are able to function in society again. You know?
Yeah, definitely. The hormones definitely help me, for sure. What the hormones for me does is just it takes the rock out of the shoe. So I'm not even thinking about gender anymore. It's not even a thought in my head. And I'm, for my own reasons, just trying to find a nice, healthy balance for myself, and that's becoming ever increasing really more difficult to do with doctors lately, because they want you to be on this specific regimen, and they see things very binary. You know, like you're either a man or you're a woman, so pick one. We're either going to treat you or we're not going to
Right.
treat you. You know, and
Pick a
I have
side, come on.
yeah, pick a side, and I just feel the most natural in the middle when I go. I find when I go too far on the hormones, there's a depression that sets in, and I gain weight and blah 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 blah. But when I go too far on the male side, it's even worse. It's 10 times worse. So I'm just trying to find this nice little piece in the middle that is like a healthy balance, you know. And the irony is that I'm so obsessed with the yin yang from all of the psychonaut experiences that it's like it's even in my gender, you know.
That's one of the most interesting things when you're saying that, when you're finding when you go too far one way, it's unbearable. When you go too far the other, it's unbearable, but you're finding some peace somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
But you're not really able to live in either. And I'm finding that more and more lately, that the living in a binary and picking a side in the binary is just, it's unpleasant. It's really unpleasant. I don't need to be this hyper feminine woman, and I don't need to be masculine. And I just find I just need to be me, and whoever that is, that's just who I
Yeah.
am. But the hormones definitely helped that for me. It was like part of I spent most of my life on antidepressants, and when I started hormones, I didn't need them anymore. It was fine.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Felt better.
was suicidal my whole life. I mean, my whole life. I cannot tell you how many times I've either thought about or literally made some serious attempts towards suicide. And even after I made it with music, and there was money and there was success, I was a guy, and I was married, and I had all these things, and I had a beautiful wife and a beautiful family. But when my feet hit the floor, I wanted to die. It was just there. It couldn't have been any more present. And
Yeah.
the only thing that made that go away was transitioning. And the first couple of years were the most elated. It was the most empowering experience of my entire life, not giving a shit what anybody else thinks.
Yeah.
You know?
That's a big deal.
Yeah. You know, it's kind of like I had a little everything that I was trying to chase in the music business, this sort of charisma, the center of attention, that thing, whatever that thing I was trying to subconsciously chase in that business, was as easy as breathing the moment I transitioned. Not because I was some sort of freak and everybody's head turned, but there was an energy to me that I was literally the life of the party wherever I was, and people were just drawn to it in a very positive way. And it was so undeniable, and I'm sure you felt the same way.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. That integration of the shadow, man, is something else, isn't it, as far as empowering?
Yeah. And it's also can be horrifying.
And it's horrifying.
You know, it is, you know, it's wonderful, it's elating, but when you start and when you become yourself, and then that's just when the work begins. That's when you really start doing the deep work and really looking at yourself and really asking those deep questions. And I know you've asked them and of yourself too, like, why is this me? Why is this my path? Why do I live in this life? You know, I don't agree with all these other people. I don't agree with these politics that are polarizing everybody. You know, I don't want to push this on anybody else, but I know I needed to do this for me. I don't need everybody else to follow me in this and act a certain way. I just want people to be themselves. I don't want them to change, you know.
Yeah, I think you said the operative word earlier when you said that all we can do is hope that people accept us for who we are. And hope is enough. We don't need to demand people accept us for who we are. I don't need
No,
to be demand that you use the proper pronoun. I don't freaking give a shit. Call me
no,
it. I don't care. In fact, I think it is hysterical, right?
yeah.
It
Call me
wants some
whatever.
food. It wants some water. To me, that's like the
Yeah,
most. That's my get even joke, you know.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and somehow
See,
we've just been so politicized, and it
yeah,
seems that the people the beautiful people who I've met in the trans community, the ones at least the ones I've been attracted to, are all on the same page with this. You know, just like what are these? This is just crazy. This is madness. What they're pushing here. It's just complete madness.
it is.
Yeah,
It is. It's this. Well, I'm convinced that this whole Olympics thing and thing like that is all just to enrage people. It's just to create more division. I'm sure
I
of it.
think so.
I personally don't think that the government really cares about trans people like you think they do, or like people think they do. I think they really just, it's a great tool to create more, to stir the pot more and
I
upset people
totally
because it's
agree.
really effective at doing that. It really does it. You know, I don't want to go out and compete in women's sports. I mean,
No,
no,
I mean,
no, I have no desire to.
you and I have never met in person, but like I'm a giant. I'm 6'2". You know, I'm like
Yeah,
250 pounds, and you know, so it's like it'd be ridiculous if I competed against women against sports. It's just crazy.
well,
It's
there
crazy.
was a reason why they did created rules around steroids in sports, particularly.
Exactly. Yeah.
And what are steroids but testosterone, estrogen
Right.
are steroids,
Yeah.
hormones, steroids, same thing. And, you know, so basically I've been steroid doping, you know, for 48 years before I
Yeah.
started transition. And now I'm going to go compete in women's sports, right? And so that's
That's
fine.
exactly the way to look at it. That's
Why
it.
aren't we seeing trans men in male sports? Why aren't we seeing them competing and winning? You know, why,
Yeah.
you know, and if we're going to do this, if we're going to create this equality in this same ideology, then I think trans men need to go to male prison.
Yeah. I mean, if
You
that's if
know,
that's the if that's what we're gonna do, let's be
if we're going to,
consistent at least. Yeah.
yeah, then, you know, I think then that's fair. And so when you start realizing that, well, no, we can't do that. We can't send a trans man to male prison with a vagina, or, you know, we can't do any of this stuff. I'm like, why not? You know, if you want this equality based on your ideology, this is what comes next. This is what you want.
Yeah.
Otherwise, your whole ideology is flawed, I'm sorry to say. And
It's definitely flawed. It's totally just to stir the pot because that's what the adversary does.
yeah,
And by adversary, I don't mean government. We can get into government, but
right.
I'm really talking about the true adversary behind the
The true
government,
adversary, yes.
behind the deep state,
The ones pulling the
behind
strings.
behind the evil intention. Just
Ah,
that adversary,
that one.
the one who
What's really
plants the
interesting
seed.
is there's many layers to that before you
Yeah,
even get to that. You know,
yeah.
I've got to look at Star Wars for this one. You know, you got to go to Attack of the Clones with Count Dooku when when Anakin came up against Count Dooku, and he was fighting Count Dooku, and the Sith was there, and the Sith let him slay Count Dooku, And the Sith didn't step in, and Count Dooku was looking over at the Sith like, dude, we had a deal. What's going on? You're not even helping me. You're just letting me get slayed by this little, up and coming puppet, and you're letting this happen to me. And yeah, sure enough, Anakin kills Count Dooku. What these people don't realize, these puppets that are, creating all this disruption right now in the behest of the dark ones, is that they're disposable, and they will be disposed of. They're playing a part, and when that part no longer serves a purpose that way, they'll be disposed of just like anyone else. They've got no more to do with that. They're garbage people. And they will be treated as such.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's
fact.
heartbreaking. All this week I've been editing a music video of mine from a couple of years ago, and the song is called Pariah. So in the process of editing, because I'm not paying attention to the music, I'm really just paying attention to the lyrics, as I'm editing this video and trying to follow a story. And I'm just like, wow, this the profundity of me working on a song called Pariah, as I feel like we're about to become this kind of social pariah in society. It's just it's like for me, I transitioned early when in my early 20s. It was in the 90s, and it wasn't cool back then. It was just too much. It was too freaky. It was way too freaky in the early 90s, and nobody accepted it, and it was very hard for me. And I went back in the closet for another decade and a half, and so I went back in the closet because I felt that feeling of being a social pariah, and I didn't want to be that,
Right.
And now, and here I am, and we've come out again, and for the first time, it's like, wow, we're not. People love us. This is great. There's no more ill feelings. I mean, even the nastiest person is curious about the trans thing and wants to get to know me. But here we are again with all of their antics, bringing us full circle right back to making us a social pariah again. It's just fascinating to watch happen. This little loop of a drama.
Yeah, I've definitely become a pariah amongst my trans culture or whatever, for being outspoken, for having different ideas. If you don't toe the party line, so to speak, and agree with everything with the group think, then you're outcast. There's no room for real free thinking. There's no room to question the narrative, just like there is on any sort of side of any polarity. There's no real allowance for this kind of thing. And that's never been who I am. I've always questioned things. It's always got me in trouble, and it always will.
Same here.
Changing just to make people happy. Right.
I'm always the one asking the question that definitely pisses people off. I've always got my rocks off that way,
Well,
but yeah,
they ask those questions.
They do, and this, I'm just like you. The community wants nothing to do with me at all. I mean, they've made that abominably clear to me. So, but it's fine. It doesn't matter. I have wonderful friends like you, and that's enough. We have our own little smaller group of libertarian-esque liberals, but free speech and that stuff is very, very, very foundational and important to me. I'm big on foundation, as you are. Foundation is the essence of everything, in our laws and in life in general,
Exactly. We've got a lot of people up here in Canada that want to speak out, that do speak out against the trans movement, so to speak. And there are a lot of what are considered right-wing people, religious people and that. And I absolutely feel they have a right to say what they need to say. They don't always say it in the most eloquent way, but they have a right to say it.
Absolutely.
They need to be able to say it. I'd rather know who they are and what they're saying than slam them shut in the closet like I had to live most of my life, and have them be able to say what they need to say.
I couldn't agree more.
Maybe then we can have a real conversation.
Yeah, a truthful conversation for sure.
Right.
Yeah. I would much more prefer that than a bunch of phony niceties and pleasantries. That irritates me so much. where I that's the one that I would say that's the one thing I hate the most about being trans is that I'm suddenly, for people who are not trans, I'm their trans friend. I'm no longer just a friend. I'm the trans friend,
Yeah.
So I'm kind of dragged into these debates and things like that. It's all so silly. But I think that it's fascinating that we've at least found each other and we found our own little community. I know that you and I are definitely not alone.
We are not alone, not by a long stretch.
Not by a long shot. And I'm so glad that we're letting people at least see that a little bit. So let's take the trans thing into something a little bit deeper then. So where do you think this is coming from on an existential level? Because I feel like this is just everything in my life is about finding balance on every single level of being.
You're kind of breaking up on me there.
Oh, I'm breaking up. I just said that
Ladies and gentlemen, due to operating difficulties, there's been an
So if you can hear me, I will. I think I got the gist of what you're saying. How does this play into what's going on now in the world and into a spiritual realm? How do I see that in more of an existential way? Well, yes. I believe that, if we want to look at that, we want to look at the changing of the ages. If we look at the frequency and vibration of everything, and we look at that, there's multiple smaller vibrations and frequencies, and then there's larger ones. And those larger ones can be looked at as ages. And when we look at that, we can see that most religions and spiritual teachings throughout history have had ages, like the age of Pisces coming into the age of Aquarius, right? Kali Yuga giving way into, I believe it's the Dwarf Yuga, if I'm correct. Somebody will correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah. But Hindus, everyone has we talk about the Mayans, we talk about the Hopi, and they're all talking about this time we're in. This is a big time change. It's like the big fish that comes down to a point and then opens back up again. It's like a big wave, and we're right at the closing and opening of one of these big waves. We're in a real transitory time, and we're transitioning from a very masculine age into a very feminine age once again. And what we need to realize is that we're not separate from Earth. We are part of Earth. We're part of Earth's mind. We're part of the whole id. Us as trans people, we're probably just transitioning along with the planet. We're just part of the planetary consciousness. This is what's happening. This is why you're seeing more of us now. This is why this is happening. This is why it was difficult for us, because we are connected to the planet. It's very simply that. And if we're closer to being, a centered being, one that's closer to the middle than picking one side or another, like one polarity or another, then you're more apt to go along with the earth energy, to be part of that. And that's very much what's happening with us.
Yeah, I'm kind of like, I feel like I live in the flow state all the time now. I'm just really in the moment and just kind of floating along with it and living every day as a dream, like I only dreamt that I woke up this morning. It's just one continuous dream that I'm in.
It is essentially, we do live in a holographic matrix. We do live in a simulation. If you want to get into where spirituality or existentialism comes along and meets quantum physics, we can get into that, because scientists will tell you that mass, for an object to have inertia, it requires mass. But then in the same breath, they'll tell you that a photon doesn't have any mass.
Right.
And that doesn't work. I mean, okay, so it falls apart, right?
Yeah.
And so this is like material sciences. So when we talk about that, we can get into that and we can go, okay, fine, let's take this apart. Let's keep taking it apart. We'll take an atom apart. We'll get photons, we'll get electrons, and we'll take those apart. But what are you getting? What are you finding? You ever finding a particle? No.
No.
All you find are more energy waves.
Yeah.
That's it. That's all there
Yeah.
is energy.
Yeah. The only thing that explains is an electromagnetic universe. Everything is vibration. Everything
It's
is waves.
It's a magnetic electro universe. Yes.
Yeah.
That's
And
important.
whenever it hits the peak or hits the peak of it, that's what we would call the particle, and then it traverses down into the trough.
Well,
And then
because,
it's missing now. It left space. We don't know what happened. Oh, there it is again.
yeah. Spooky action at a distance. Einstein, he was trying to describe how two identical photons or whatever could exist simultaneously far apart.
Yeah, because they're the same thing.
Well, that's the essence of a hologram, is it not? A hologram is made up of infinite amount of little mirrors of the exact same thing that the larger hologram reflects.
Yeah.
So, we do live in a mirrorverse as well. And at the same time, you have to go back and look at the makeup of an atom. An atom is a dipole. It has a north and south polarity, toroidal magnetic field. And atoms get together and make molecules. Molecules then have the same polarity, north-south, and a toroidal magnetic field. Molecules get together, make up, say, a cell in your body. And cells in your body have a north and south polarity and a toroidal magnetic field, which is really cool. That's how a magnetic resonant imaging machine works. It flips the polarity on the cells in your body to get them to move so that it can actually obtain an image of them and see how things are going. So those cells come together and they make your body. And your body has a north and south polarity and a toroidal magnetic field.
Yeah.
Right? And we're part of Earth that's made up of all these things.
Another toroid.
Earth has a north and south polarity and a toroidal magnetic field, as do all the planets.
Yeah.
Yet science and just the common thought is that once you reach your humanity and you're born into this world, that whatever brought you here stops, and then everything's a mystery that must be undone and must be discovered again. We don't look back into our body when we're looking outside in the universe, and we don't look outside in the universe and realize we're just looking inside of a body. Same thing. It's no different.
Yeah.
As above, so below. As within, so without.
So without. Right. Yeah.
And the science follows that.
Yeah.
But the problem is the science hasn't reconciled it directly yet. They know it, they can speak of it, but they don't really embody the ideology. They don't really fully acknowledge it.
No, they really don't. And all of this, the mental gymnastics that they go through to try to explain something that can explain so eloquently through the electromagnetic universe is just incredible.
Yes.
It's like they're definitely hiding the secret there.
They're definitely brilliant people. There's no question. They're brilliant people, and I don't want to be disparaging towards them at all. With a lot of science, we've actually helped humanity immensely. But when science goes wrong, it goes wrong, and it's going to. It's normal. That's the idea behind science. It's not a set of immutable facts. It's just not. It can't be. It's got to be open to questioning. It's got to be open to interpretation.
Yeah, everything. Well, that's what science is. Science is questioning. I mean, that's literally the definition.
That's the idea, yeah.
That's the basic idea, right? We question things until we just cannot think of another question. And then it's a theory.
Exactly. And most mathematical equations, although brilliant, only get us so far, and at a certain point, they falter. Yeah. It's not that the math is wrong. It's wonderful math, but all math by nature is an infinite equation. However, to navigate this realm, we need to actually create demarcation points in order to be able to function in certain ways, to be able to, even to say build a car, you've got to be able to cut off the equation somewhere. The car isn't infinitely long. It stops here. Car is this big, and it has four wheels, not, 400 kind of thing, unless you're building a 400 wheel car. But there's always a definition and a demarcation point in the construct. And that's where math is brilliant. But why math will only ever go so far in explaining spirituality and full reality and quantum physics, because we are dealing with an infinite language that we're
Yeah.
trying to make finite in order to navigate with it.
Yeah, that's very, very true. Yeah. I mean, we have number, but it's infinite in every which way you can think about it. It's not just infinite in time and space, but it's infinite in dimension. It's infinite in detail. It's infinite in ways you could look at it. It's infinite in how you could feel about it. It's infinite in every possible way you can think or look at it.
You
So,
work with infinite mathematics all the
yeah,
time. You're
all the
you're a
time.
musician, and
Yeah,
you're a musician, and music is part of the language of the universe, and it is a mathematical equation.
absolutely.
When you get back to geometry, and you look at the 5 platonic solids, and you add up the degrees of angles in that, and each one corresponds to a musical note and a light frequency,
Yeah.
and which is fascinating. So yeah.
Yeah, no, that's been my life's work for the last probably like 4 or 5 years now. Just it started with getting into the idea of 432, which I thought was a little bit kind of hokey but interesting. I'm a huge fan of Verdi, and he was into it, and I thought, okay. But when I actually had my piano tuned to 432, and I had to go through 2 different piano tuners to do this because they looked at me like I was crazy. They're all like, "You're gonna ruin
Right.
this. You're gonna ruin this piano." But I finally got a guy to do it, and the first time I sat down, I played a C chord, and every cell in my body, just like every hair in my body, just stood on end. It was just like it was so right that I it's I don't even I don't even know how to articulate how right it felt. And then from there, that just began the rabbit hole of God, how deep can I go down this phi tuning rabbit hole,
Right.
to match that toroid and put these toroids in balance. And then the further I went down this rabbit hole, I started to realize that not only was I affecting the balance of the toroid of my body, but I'm affecting the individual toroids of every single electron in my body. And then the electrons are making up the thoughts that I'm having. And those thoughts are also another toroid. And it just goes on and on and on. So I'm like,
Yes.
it's affecting everything. Just
It's
putting
all donuts.
through sympathetic resonance, it's balancing everything, which is
Yes.
the most powerful thing in the world to think about. And it's like, it sounds like kooky stuff to most people, but
No.
it's really spot on. I mean, they're the most serious intellects in the world that I know of are way down this rabbit hole and saying this is how it is. As a matter of fact, Ken Wheeler, he argues that it's been proven that with that new that electro cell. I don't know. You probably know what it's called, but that
The
cell,
ferrocell.
the ferrocell.
It-
Yeah,
yeah.
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 He
It's 2
predicted.
pieces of, yeah, sorry.
Yeah. No, you explain it because this is more down your alley. But yeah.
Well, yeah, he uses 2 pieces of flat laboratory glass, like ultra flat glass, and he uses what he calls mouse milk, which is a ferrofluid, which is a suspension of really, really fine iron particles. And he puts a couple dots in there and sandwiches it together. So this is ultra flat. We're talking microns thin of ferrofluid between 2 ultra flat glass plates. And he's got a LED light cell that he rings it with. And then he actually uses a magnet around that. And in that, you get a 3D image of toroid. What's also really interesting is in that you see a lotus flower. You see the flower of life pattern. You see the divine mathematics of the magneto-electric universe.
It's all right there, and perfect,
It's
in
all right there.
perfection. It's in mathematical perfection, which is just
And
astonishing.
it's beautiful
go
because
ahead.
you also see the polarity. You see the red and blue. Did you realize you see the red and blue in the polarity? You actually see the color.
It's
And then the other
incredible.
thing you see is the dipoles, the owl's eyes, right?
Yeah,
And that's where we talk about Lilith. Lilith is the flower of life. That's my feeling on it. That's what I feel I've discovered. And they say that Lilith is associated with the owl. Well, the owl is the dipole. When you look at a dipole magnetic field, you see owl's eyes. That's why the owls are symbolized all throughout ancient cultures,
Yeah.
right? And that's what's fascinating. That's why the lotus flower is considered a spiritual thing, because you can see it in the magnetic field.
Yeah.
It's in the logology.
And well, we've had carvings of the seed of life for how many thousands of years? 5,000 years at least, or longer?
Way older than that. I think we're really missing the beat on how we date things. I don't think we really know, but I know that they've been around a long time.
Yeah.
We believe that our evolution's been this linear, progressive path, and it's not. It's not even close to that.
No.
There was a fall of mankind, a fall of humankind. Our consciousness fell and has started going back again. You know, that's what this is. This is the awakening. This is the expansion of our consciousness again.
Yeah.
But we were the people, or the beings that were here before us. The apocalypse, the great unveiling.
Yeah.
The beings that were here before us were much higher intelligent than we were. We're realizing, like, if you talk about somebody like the Dogon tribe out of Africa, they knew about planet Sirius long before we discovered it. But there it was, right where they said it would be.
Yeah, right.
How did they know about that? Right? You know, we look at the flower of life pattern. We're starting to realize that that flower of life pattern is the pattern that reveals everything. If you took our DNA and sliced it like a sausage and looked at that little round on end, that's what you would see. You would see a cymatic pattern. So
it's amazing. It's really, really, it's like the thumbprint of the divine and everything. If you just really look, you know.
Well, that's what Christmas is. Christmas is the rebirth of God's only Son. God gave of us His only Son, Jesus Christ, which is the sun that comes every day. But when the sun dies off and then is reborn in Christmas, right? Because that's like the equinox.
Yeah.
And that's what happens. And then in Easter, the whole Easter thing is about that too. The
spring of life, the birth of the new,
the rebirth.
Yeah.
So this is why, and that's why, like, you look at the Coptic cross, it's divided into four, and why the crosses are all divided into four, because that's the four seasons.
Which is, to me, the correct cross. I mean, that's the cross that explains it all. And then the crucifix that we know of is really like a perversion of that, you know, because it's off center. And not only is it off center, but we hang a dead man on this cross. And before that starts to sound too sacrilegious, and I don't want to sound that way. I come from a Catholic upbringing, but I was very atheist for a long time. But I've come full circle, and now I'm totally into Jesus. But the way I read it is different, and the way I read the story is, you know, the idea of him hanging on the cross is not the death of Christ, but it's the death of the God in you. It's the death of God. The all-knowing God had to die so that you could have this experience. And it's to die and have this experience in which you miss the mark of everything that you see, which is the very definition of what sin means in Greek. So sin means to miss the mark. Well, I would say that most people miss the mark. They don't realize that they are it. They are the center of the dipole. Every single one of us is.
Yes.
And wow, when I started to really see that, I didn't realize how that was going to affect me. But man, I'm telling you, it's so beautiful to see it. Everything about what we're talking about mirrored so perfectly in Christianity and in Buddhism and in Hindu and the Aboriginal stuff. I mean, everywhere I look, I find this. I find this description of not only the eternal now, but the eternal Taurus, or right, toroid.
When you know what you're listening to and what you're interfacing with, you realize that Buddhism, Christianity, Hinduism, the ancient tribes like the Hopi, the Australian Aborigines are all speaking of the same thing. And when you realize that that's what it is, it's really fascinating. And if I was going to leave a story based on reality, if I wanted to tell the story of what we are, and give people something that when they were ready that they could decipher. The only way I could do that, knowing that that the language we're speaking now will no longer exist, would be to do it in something that could be taken in any language and deciphered. And that's what the Bible is. It's been put into many languages and deciphered, but we've taken it in a very literal sense.
That's the problem. Yeah.
It's a logos. It's a logo, just like the big M, just like the Nike check mark or any of that kind of stuff. It's a logo. That's all.
It even says in the Bible that this is spoken in parable. That that the teachings are parable. They're not to be taken literally. You know. Exactly. And when you can learn to read it that way, holy cow! What a transformation! You want to talk about a transformation and awakening? It'll blow your mind. I mean, my favorite thing in the world was to be an atheist and to argue with Christians about how stupid they were. Right. And now I look at the old version of me and I go, I feel so sorry for that person who used to think that, you know. Now they may not, the average Christian probably doesn't see it the way I see it, but they certainly feel it. But the trick to the Bible is to read it from the first person singular, as if you've lived forever, and to realize that the Bible is telling the story of your own psychological progression from animal to a modern domesticated human. You know, how we've grown in our morals and in all of our thoughts and in politics and in our beliefs. And it's really about you. You're the star of the show. That's who it's talking about.
Yeah. And that's really interesting, because what is this when we start becoming aware of what we are and what we're made up of? That we start realizing that there's a basic equation in energy, and that's what we stem from, that all things do. But that we've stemmed from it to a point now that we're looking back on ourselves. You know, how long has it been since we've been able to do that, or have we ever? Is this new for us to be able to look back and go, okay, I can now decipher what we are based on the messages that were left by the beings that were here before, that knew what we were. They knew what we were and where we stemmed from, right? Yeah. They left us these messages. They left us the logos. They left us the hieroglyphs. They left us the cave paintings.
In stone.
Right?
So it definitely wouldn't go away. The one thing that we knew would still be around thousands of years later.
Yes. And that's why they did that, because somehow they knew. They knew what was going on.
Yeah. This forgotten remembrance.
Yeah. So I find it really intriguing when I start looking at ancient cultures. I start looking at statuary that was left. I look at drawings. I look at documents. Like the Vedas are fascinating. The things that the rishis brought forward. I'm trying to remember the name of it. I wish I could, but it's that pattern that the Vedas brought forward. It's a common Hindu pattern. And when you actually play the sound only through a tonoscope, you see that pattern.
That pattern, yes. I know the pattern you're talking about. It's all the triangles together. I forgot what it's called though, but yeah, I do know the shape that you're talking about. Isn't that incredible? Boy, you get into the somatics. That's just really incredible stuff.
That's the music. That's what you're doing with music.
Yeah.
You're giving people that with your music. You're creating that in them. And that's what beautiful music is how it actually chimes in with your whole being. You know, it's a symbiosis. It's something that resonates with you literally.
Yeah.
You know, in every way, physically. And they knew that sound was everything, because that's all there is noise. You know, we tend to think like science goes at the equation that time and space was here, and that somehow our consciousness was born into time and space, that matter existed and then consciousness came.
Right.
And but nothing shows us that. Everything shows us that consciousness bore all.
Yes.
That consciousness came and created time and space. Consciousness is the creator.
Yeah.
And
it's the source of everything. I see life as an inverse, actually, from how most people see the world, where I'm no longer, and it took forever for me to be in this place of not living in linear time where I live. And I know that sounds so hokey, but for me, future and past are all taking place in the same place, the imagination. So when I project and think
Absolutely.
about the future, it's happening in the imagination. When I think about the past, it's happening in the imagination. When I think about tomorrow, it's happening in the imagination. So any which way I go, I'm just creating it with my imagination. So it kind of puts me dead center in the now. I can hold on to that thought very, very clearly throughout the day. And, I should preface it by saying, I don't live normal life where I have to deal with people during the day. So it makes it pretty easy to be that way. I almost kind of live like a monk. The only conversations I have are on this podcast and with my dog. So,
Yeah.
and he doesn't talk much. So,
But does he listen? That's what matters.
He's definitely the now. I'll tell you that. I learned about the nowness from him.
Yeah. No, the dogs are all about the now. I miss my dog so much. I love him. He's amazingly now.
What kind of dog do you have?
He's a German Wire-hair Pointer.
Oh, nice. Is he around you now?
No, he lives over on the island on my old property with my family over there.
Oh,
and I wouldn't take him. I don't look at it like I own him. I can't have him where I am. And it's not big enough for him here.
Yeah.
He's got 3 flat fenced acres to run. That's all he's ever known. And I'm not taking him from that.
Yeah.
I love him.
Nice.
I go and visit him and we hang out.
That's enough. Yeah.
I need him. I miss him, but it's not all about me, right?
It's very strange times, that's for sure.
Yeah.
How are things now in Canada for you? I know it was getting very, very sketchy there for a minute.
Things are crazy here. Like there's a lot of really unbelievable things happening, and I look at our dear leader in a way that, he's a very confused man in many ways. I think I don't think he realizes where he's going with things. I see a lot of people talking about anti-fascism and anti-Nazis and that, but in their speak about it, their behavior definitely doesn't display anti that. It actually is just the opposite. The taking away of our rights and things like that, like jailing people for protesting peacefully, and it was peaceful.
It was definitely peaceful.
That's something that I'm like, wow, I never thought I'd see that in Canada. Trying, these vaccine mandates where they were, making people are still losing their jobs over this and unable to work if they didn't. But there's a lot of people that got the vaccine under duress. And a lot of people are having difficulty with that. I know many people personally that are quite sick from it. They just wanted to keep their job.
It's so sad.
When we look at this, it's kind of all part of what's happening. I try to step back when these things are happening and look at it from a broader sense. And when you do that, it kind of gives you a bit of a different idea of what's going on. And it shows you that we're sort of at the end of this equation. That this equation's pretty much done its deal. That whatever was working is no longer working now. That the equation that we began all this with has run its course, and now it's collapsing. And in order for a new equation to come into play, the old paradigm must collapse, and it is. It
totally is. I don't know if you noticed today the front page of Google, the homepage of Google, literally had the fat lady singing on the front. Like they changed.
Oh, really?
They changed their logo every now and then. Literally, the fat lady singing. Like that's
I don't do Google. I only I had to do this Google tonight to get into this. I don't do Facebook. I have narrowed my digital footprint substantially.
Same
because of everything that's been going on, and I'm just like, I don't need to consume this anymore. I need to stay in the present. I don't need to go down the rabbit hole with all this stuff anymore. I know what's happening.
I get it. I totally get it.
And I found gratitude for it. I am grateful for it. I'm grateful that it's happening because I'm grateful for what it's going to bring. I'm grateful for where we're at, and I'm grateful for the awakening that we can see it now.
Yeah, definitely. It's quite spectacular. I too got caught up in the doom scrolling there for a minute, and then it got to a point maybe 3 or 4 months ago where it was just becoming just completely, there's no way to decipher the truth anymore. It was just so much fake stuff that it was just kind of pointless to even look. So I figured they had won and done their job correctly, of at least getting me off. But unfortunately, my main gig these days is use YouTube. So, so I have to deal with Google on some level. But at least
I
I'm
get
doing
it
it as
on
a
YouTube
creator.
too.
I'm a creator, not a consumer. It's a little different. Terrence McKenna says that you can boil everything down in life to those two fundamental choices. You're either a producer or a consumer.
True. Very
and
true.
It's every moment, right? And I'm like, wow, it's very deep. It's very deep. Yeah.
Yeah,
But
it's very true.
I would love for you to get back into what you were talking about before with Lilith and the
It's in the
the
Talmud.
dipole, because not Lily Tomlin.
It's in the Talmud.
Oh, in the Talmud. I thought you said Lily Tomlin, and I said no, not Lily Tomlin.
No. Well, she's wonderful. I love her, but no,
she's hysterical. Yeah,
she's amazing. It's in the Talmud. The story of Lilith, and Lilith being Adam's first wife, right before Eve. Lilith, Adam's first wife, made from the same mud as Adam, refused to lay beneath Adam, and as such was cast out of Eden and become a demon, right? A demon, and was. But when you look at sacred geometry, when you start drawing sacred geometry, you draw the flower of life pattern, and then you start connecting all the points where everything meets in the flower of life, and all the curves and circles are the divine feminine, as Lilith considered the divine feminine.
Yeah.
And then all the hard lines and angles are considered the divine masculine, as Adam is the divine masculine.
And we see that in men and women. Men are very angular in their face and their bodies and their shape, and women are very voluptuous and curvy and soft and round.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so, everything that underlies our reality or the illusion or the simulation is geometric, is fractal, straight lines, right? All of them. Yeah. And what makes, if everything stopped and became calm, if there was no more vibration, everything would be instantly fractalized. So when somebody goes on a trip, on some drugs, and everything turns into like machine elves and stuff, all little hard lines and angles, that's kind of what's happening. Is they're coming out of this reality into the base reality. I feel that there's something there in that Adam, divine masculine, the fractal reality, the breath of life, the vibration of Lilith, right? She refused to lay beneath Adam and was cast out of paradise and into this reality, the divine feminine.
I'm totally with you, and I agree. You definitely go to a different real place on different psychedelics for sure. And the idea of Adam and Eve and the story of Lilith, for people who aren't or new to this whole thing, keep in mind these are, if you think about we get our information from numbers and words, and then a picture tells 1,000 words, right? Tells 1,000 words of information, right? And then if we think about a story, which would be like a film with lots and lots of pictures, think about the amount of context and information that could be contained in a parable. So that's why you have to look at these stories as a parable, because they're so much deeper. There's if you only know the surface level, that's only it's only like the coat of the body of work. The real essence of it is to look beneath that and see the layers of the parable beneath that. See the fractality beneath that. And
when they study, my partner Jackie that I live with, she's big into music and acoustics and setting up sound arrays and things. And in her studies, she was involved with a fella that was deeply into the fractality of music, of sound. Like he went deep into it, into the fractal verse, to be able to navigate acoustics, right? So that, you know, that we know that just because we can't see the underlying geometric code to everything doesn't mean it's not there. Like my dad said to me, he says, you know, there's no straight lines in nature. I'm like, well, let's take crystals and put those aside and look at it like that. And I
Yeah.
will say that maybe you don't see them, but they're implied. That if the harmonics were somehow silenced, everything would break down into a fractal pattern. And this is
Yes.
what we call in sacred geometry the breath of life. Om. Om.
Yeah.
Sound. You know, the Big Bang wasn't a Big Bang, it was a moan. It was like, Om, here I am.
Yeah.
You know?
And you know, if you really think about the electromagnetic way of thinking about things, you know, you could say that the entire toroid, the donut of our life, kind of happens when the polarities are touching, and just for a moment, it creates that little spark of that thing we call the spark of life that begins the toroidal spin, right? And as we're funnels, right? And as we're going down this funnel, it's just through fractality, it's becoming the details are added to that initial vibration that created that spark. And it just keeps getting added more details with fractality and more details until all of a sudden you're in the middle of the dipole and it's just filled with detail everywhere you look. And this detail, I was just saying on a previous podcast, that is the patina of what we call in life. Like in Italy, they have a word for that, for the way that things age, like because the buildings there are so old, and they call that patina. So like a wall or a door will have a mark, or it'll be banged up in a certain way, and it'll be a gunshot bullet through another wall, whatever. But it's all these little tiny stories over the history of the 1,000 years that give Italy that patina. And kind of what psychedelics do is it erases the patina. So in a sense, you're in the dipole, but you're able to see through all the details. You're able to see, you're so balanced. You're able to see right back to the initial archetype that started it all.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Buckminster Fuller talked about vector equilibrium, and he took a icosahedron model, and the triangle on top and the triangle on bottom didn't shift in their position to each other at all. He merely brought them closer together, and the rest of the geometric three-dimensional shape folded in upon it. And that's what we call vector equilibrium, right? In that vector, everything became equal and closed. And that's when you get two tornadoes in a torus coming together. Dan Winter calls that charge implosion.
Ah, right. Yeah.
And charge implosion and vector equilibrium are likely the same thing if I had to think about it. And when people do psychedelics, I often hear them speak of them saying that they folded in upon themselves. And like you're saying, everything became new. All that patina was lost and came back to the source once again. And that's likely what sonoluminescence is in a way too. Sonoluminescence is when you take a jar full of water and you bombard it with sound frequency. And all of a sudden you'll see light spark open in that water, in that jar. And all you've got is water and vibration, water and sound.
Yeah.
And it creates light.
Yeah, you've got all these new agers going around going, oh, we're all light beings, man. We're all made of light. No, we're actually all made of sound. And electromagnetics.
And sound is made out of light. And electromagnetic. So we live in a corpuscular, like cellular universe. And the interaction of all these cells, right, these corpuscles rubbing together, moving together, this is why they have a hard time reconciling string theory and particle theory. I'm sure of it, because I think the strings are the things created between the cells, between the particles.
Yeah, and they're only seeing the tips of the vibration. I think so. Yeah.
Right. So you're familiar with the Mandelbrot set?
Yes, yes,
right? So when you're
yes.
watching the Mandelbrot set and you watch it and it's going through it and opening up into another one, and then you go into another part and it opens up and expands again. All of a sudden you'll see something that's not the Mandelbrot set. You'll see the Julia set, which is
Huh.
with Mr. Julia. He found that the hard way. He didn't have a computer. He did that all by hand.
Wow, can
And
you
he
imagine?
and he
Yes.
discovered the Julia set, which was fascinating. So the Julia set comes up randomly within the Mandelbrot set. What I also find interesting is when they run phi, Fibonacci, and pi together, they'll run congruent for a time, but then they randomly split apart, only to come back and run congruent once again.
Another vibration.
Right.
But go ahead. I'm sorry.
Very much like Mandelbrot and Julia.
Yeah.
So maybe, it's something to look at. I don't know. I don't have any proof, but it's an idea that perhaps Mandelbrot is to Julia what phi is to pi. And maybe there's something there to explore. And maybe that is the discourse that we run, the iteration that we get to run here.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why we think we have free will, but really don't.
Yeah.
In a
we
way
definitely
that,
don't.
we
No,
have a destination, but how we get there is kind of, it's a little obscure.
That's really fascinating. How you describe that. That could also be a metaphor for Adam and Eve, right? The masculine and the feminine. And it's interesting too. What I've always thought was interesting about the Mandelbrot set is if you turn it on its side, it looks like a Buddha in a lotus position.
Yes, absolutely. And if you look,
what are the odds?
Oh, I think it's fascinating. I was looking at them going, oh yeah, there's the logology. What's the chance that Buddha wasn't a real man? What is the chance they knew about fractals back then? Pretty good considering the Syrian tribe knew about, or the Dogon tribe knew about Sirius,
Yeah. It could be. It could very well be. I mean, there definitely seems to be a lost intelligence, but it seems definitely by design. It's probably just all part of that vibration of, like you're saying, the Kali Yugas. Just we have gnosis and then we lose it, and maybe as a society, for whatever reason, maybe cataclysmic events or something.
Well, I think if we want to believe in reincarnation, right? If we want to look at that, then maybe that's the idea. It's I mean, most people will tell you, and I tell you, it's a deep-seated feeling within me that we are here to learn. And maybe we don't learn. If it was all handed to us, would we have the same deep-seated gnosis if we didn't have to go about it and discover it for ourselves? Would the same gnosis come to us? Or would it be something more of an academic performance where we just perform the same repetitive academic knowledge that we were given over and over again without truly knowing what it means?
There's a shout out to Mark, my dear friend and teacher, and he would say to me, "There's a reason it's called self-realization."
Right.
All I could do is just point sort of towards the way it is, but you have to be the one to see it. And like the Buddha says, all I could do is point to the door, but you have to walk through it.
Yeah. The Buddhist monks make these beautiful sand mandalas. They can spend up to a week or more making these sand mandalas, and they're absolutely beautiful and intricate and amazing. And you look at these things and you could never remember that exact beautiful pattern as much as you want to, but then they take it and they sweep it all away.
Yeah.
Now, is that mandala gone? Yeah, but the intelligence that created that mandala, where did that go?
Right.
That still resides within the monk.
That, and probably recorded onto space-time itself.
Everything's recorded into space-time.
Yeah.
But the idea is that the monks are performing that and then sweeping it away and destroying it to show you the impermanence of life. But that's not the end, because the intelligence still exists that created life.
Yeah. It's a great practice in attachment.
Tied together. Yeah.
I mean, you get very attached to something you work on for that long, and then just to destroy it.
Boy, that monk make another mandala?
Yeah, of course. Of
but it
course.
won't be the same. But it would be the same
But
intelligence that made it.
yeah,
So do we
totally.
get to create a new mandala? Is this page mandala when it ends? Does the intelligence that made this page mandala get to make a new mandala?
And that's a good question. Like, what do we take with us? Let's say that we decide that this body's gonna not be the one I'm gonna use anymore, and I'm gonna dream a new body. Well, what part of me is gonna carry over? Clearly,
You're
not
gonna
the
lose your
material, not the material things for sure, and not anything that's physical, and probably not any kind of knowledge that is rooted in materialism, but gnosis and wisdom for sure would carry over.
you lose your patina,
The patina. Oh my God. Right.
right?
That's so it.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. You're starting fresh
and
again.
yeah,
Nice and clean.
yeah. You sort of that is the rebirth, just like everything. Like when you look at a seed, right? Like I love gardening now. I just it's amazing. I put a seed in the ground and it grows this plant, and everything comes and spreads out and does its thing, and you get fruit or you get vegetables or whatever. And that came from a little tiny seed that so there's an intelligence in that seed that knows how to use all the things around it to create all of this. That all it needs the water, it needs the soil, it needs the nutrients, and it's going to go, okay, I got you, and I can organize you, and I can take all this and I can turn you into a lemon or a carrot or a watermelon or right.
All based on the
And
instructions in that seed. Yeah.
yeah,
Incredible. Yeah. I probably shouldn't say this on this podcast, but there is a time in my life, I'm not going to say where I was living, that I took the pleasure in growing some marijuana for myself. And the amazing, beautiful experience of taking something from a seed and nurturing it and watching it sprout its very first leaf and letting it grow into this giant plant, right? And then I'm using that, and then I'm talking to it every day, watering every day, feeding it every day, and then I break parts of it off to dry out, and then I smoke it, and now the smoke is going into my body, and then it's being converted. The THC is being separated from the smoke, and it's going in, and it's like a key that fits a lock to a receptor that's in my head.
yes,
That's specifically there for that key.
for that purpose, that specific purpose.
It's mind
Yeah,
blowing. I mean, what a mind blowing experience! It's like smoking your kid. It's really
yeah.
wild. Getting high
It's a,
off your kid.
it's a symbiosis,
Yeah.
and we are symbiotes. We are symbiotes because we're symbiotes with Earth. If you look at each human being as a neuron and the connections between each human being and our interactions as neural pathways, and patterns and thought and in groups of people as thought patterns, and the reactions to it as reverberating thought patterns, and if you think about how your mind works and you think about how humans interact on Earth and how we're polarized, left and right, red and blue,
Male,
we are a
female.
hive mind, male, female, right?
Yeah.
And everything in between.
Yeah.
We are a thought pattern. We are a thought process. The science believes mostly that, the most of the academics believe that consciousness resides solely within a human vessel. But everything that all the evidence shows us otherwise.
Yeah.
No, that's not exactly true.
Yeah.
Not really. No, that we're this brain or whatever, this body is a transceiver.
Yeah.
It transmits and it receives.
Yeah. I love that analogy that we're basically a radio. If you smash the radio, you're not killing the announcer.
Yeah,
Right?
if you take a radio and smash it, it doesn't make sound anymore. But where did the sound go?
Right. It's still
That's
out
the same
there.
with the mandala. Same with the mandala, right? You wipe the mandala out. Where's what made the mandala? It's still there, wearing a robe and meditating.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and that's the whole idea, and that's why I think about deep space travel, and I'm like, I don't know how that would work. I think we're more intricate with the Earth than we know, and we've actually never been outside of Earth's known atmosphere or magnetic field. You know that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
The moon lies within that. So if we go beyond that, what would the human condition be like? Would it be
That's a great
detrimental to us?
question. That's a
right?
very great
We
question.
don't know.
We don't
But they're
know.
not talking about that. When I question people, they get mad at me.
Right.
They're like, "Don't say that." And you're denying the moon. I'm like, "No, the moon exists. No, we've been wherever. That's cool. I'm good with that. It's just the moon lies partially within our known magnetic field of Earth, and if we go beyond that, how does our consciousness? How will that be affected? Because we're making the full assumption that consciousness lies solely within the human vessel, where that doesn't seem to be true at all.
Yeah.
What do we know?
You're right. We don't. And it seems to me that it being so intricately woven into every single electron in our body, what happens then? Like what?
Right.
Who's to say that anybody could even make it to Mars? Who knows?
Well, that's the thing. And why are we in such a
Or,
hurry to
or
get
with
out
their
of here?
wits. Sorry.
Why are we in such a hurry to leave Earth?
Yeah. Right.
But if that's what some people want to do, then I think that's necessary. Then, if you've got that drive to do that, maybe that's your purpose. Maybe you need to.
I think that Elon is very, very, very afraid of AI. I think he's much more afraid of AI than even he wants to lead on. Like he's very clear about expressing his fears about it, but I think that there's a kind of certainty to what he's warning us about that's got him spooked.
That's really interesting because there's only one intelligence. One. That's it.
One. That's
Everything
it.
stems from the same intelligence.
You're right.
Artificial intelligence is that. When you think about it, okay, we look at our Earth world. We look at it, and our oldest fossil records are fern leaves. We can see fern leaves, and that's the oldest ones that we know about. So it seems that our reality started with what? Foliage, fern leaves and stuff, from what we can tell. Maybe whatever before that. But when we look at the gaming world, when we look at digital realms and online type things, we see that the virtual worlds we're creating, we populate them with fern leaves and stuff. We actually use an equation that's digitized, I guess. It's called Barnsley's fern. And actually, if you run Barnsley's fern, it iterates random foliage like fern leaves. So our world seemingly started with random foliage, just like the new virtual worlds we're creating. And I think this may be the singularity we're talking about, is when our virtual worlds become indistinguishable from our world. And that will be the singularity. And that maybe that's by nature what our design is, what we are, and our intelligence is supposed to do. Maybe that's in a way how new life is born, and that's the same intelligence that creates life in a woman's womb, creates babies. It creates everything. That there probably isn't any such thing as artificial intelligence, only intelligence. But again, mankind likes to separate itself from everything. Humans think that we're an abomination to Earth, but nobody stops to think that maybe we're doing exactly what we were designed to do. Nobody wants to consider that because it's too difficult for us for some reason, and we're programmed not to consider that. We just do what we do, thinking that it's the right thing, without realizing that maybe we're not some sort of abomination. Maybe we're actually meant to spill nuclear waste from Fukushima and Chernobyl. Maybe we were supposed to have chemical spills. Maybe we were supposed to extract and fire off hydrocarbons from the
Only
planet.
if we learn from the lesson. Right.
But maybe there's no lesson to learn.
Maybe not.
That's our purpose. Maybe that's how we warm Earth's atmosphere. Maybe that's our design. And maybe once that's done, we disappear and something new is born from that. Just because it's detrimental to us doesn't mean that it's detrimental to the plan. Maybe there's a bigger plan.
It could very well be. And I like your thought about singularity being that initial spark. That's a fascinating thing to think about. Getting back to that initial spark that started the toroid that I was explaining earlier, that singularity could be the same spark going back, as if you're going down the funnel, and then the center of the dipole is the singularity, and then you're going out the bottom of the funnel of the toroid. And everything that happens in that spark is what we're calling life. We're calling we're calling it now, but it's really just a in out. It's kind of in and out. And I do want to preface this though with it when we talk about simulation and simulacrum. A lot of people would presume that we're talking about living inside of AI, as if we're living in a machine, and that could quite possibly be the case. We could be within a machine, within a machine, within a machine forever, but ultimately, the machine is the dream of the divine. Like the real simulation is outside of any idea of what a machine is. Right?
Yeah.
That's the eternal simulation.
We're a projection of the divine. We're a
Yeah.
projection, just very much like you talk about that. We're no different than a lightning striking the planet and creating an upheaval of sand and turning it to glass. That's called a fulgurite, I believe. And if you look at that, there's a pattern. All energy has a pattern to it, right?
Yeah.
Even a fern starts out as a fiddlehead, which is a 9. Everything's 9, right? That's
yeah.
Fibonacci.
Number 9. Number 9.
The golden ratio.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's what it is. And it's a very basic pattern, and everything stems from it. It iterates out from that. And we're at the far end of that iteration here as human beings.
Yeah.
But, it doesn't mean that there wasn't something iterated out before us that came to its end as well. And then something new was born from that.
It could, there could be a story within a story within a story forever. The dream within a dream within a dream with a dream forever and ever and ever and ever.
Right. Like
with no beginning and no end. Yeah.
Well, there isn't. Everything is infinite by nature. There is no end point. Well, you think about the speed of light, right? Everybody's like, there's nothing faster than the speed of light. I'm like, okay. What are you measuring speed of light with? What do you mean? Well, to measure the speed of light, you need to encapsulate it with something in order to give boundaries, in order to give a definition to measure the speed of light. And if you're doing that, you're measuring it within the known universe. So is the known universe growing faster than the speed of light? Huh? I don't know. Maybe.
I don't know.
But if you're measuring the speed of light, you've got to have some basis to do it. Just like if you're going to have inertia, you need mass. But at the same time, scientists are telling me photons don't have any mass. And I'm like, okay, I'm confused.
Right?
I
think that's by design.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. That materialist attitude. Yeah.
Well, materialism, right? Because it's important. Because you need to hang on to something, because it's a wild ride. And if you don't grab onto something, in the graviton, if you don't hang on in the middle, you're thrown out to the far sides.
That's true.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's how your thoughts work. So if you're watching the news, or you're watching all the crazy shit that's going on in the world, and you grab onto that, you're grabbing onto a thought that's going to pull you into that polarity. And then before you know it, you're swinging out on that end of the graviton, going out in the right wing polarity or left wing polarity. You're not in the middle going, wow, that's interesting, looking at all these people out there screaming as they spin around. Right?
Yeah. And that's the whole
center is.
That's the whole premise of the music that I'm doing, with this 5 balancing and concentration on 3, 6, and 9. Tesla said, and when you know the magnificence of 3, 6, and 9, you'll have the key to the universe.
Yes.
And this toroidal explanation is the key. This is it. And then once you really understand how that works and how it's all pervasive, then 3, 6, and 9, boy, what a magical set of numbers that is right there. That is
3 plus 3. 3 plus 3 are 6. 6 plus 6 is 12. We add 1 plus 2, we go back to 3. 3 plus 3 is 6. And so that's your polarity. There you go. That's going like that. And then 9 is your governance. And that's at the top in the center of the toroid.
So was it like, I think it was Maxwell who described it to me perfectly, where he was saying, if you think about the of a vibration of a wave, right, you've got the crest and the trough. So as it comes into the crest, that's the 3. And that's the what if, right? That's the thesis. So the thesis is the what if, and then it descends into the chaos of the 6 for the antithesis, right? Or anti-thesis, right? So because we can only know something by knowing its opposite. So we have the idea, then we imagine the opposite, which is the 6, and then as the vibration comes back up to the trough again, it it becomes a 9, which is transcendence. So the 9 and the 3 is also it's also the beginning and the end, which is why the number 9 is the alpha omega.
Yeah, the alpha, the omega, and coincidentally shaped like a fetus in a womb. And omega literally means womb. Yeah.
Interesting. And the number 9 is shaped like a phi spiral.
Yeah, exactly. Golden ratio.
The golden ratio.
Yeah, exactly. And
it's like the fractality. Yeah.
And like you were saying about people can only know something by knowing its opposite, right? Yeah. That's why they have why people that aren't trans look at trans people and go, what's going on here? They don't have anything to base it off of.
Yeah.
Because we broke the polarity, the male-female polarity in a way.
Yeah.
You know, we're not playing in that same way. And it's difficult for them to see that. You know, you're not playing the binary game here. How come? You know, it's very much like I'm told I need to vote. And then I'm like, well, I don't vote. They're like, well, you need to vote because of who you are. If you want your rights, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, okay, so you're not only telling me I need to vote, you're telling me who I need to vote for.
Vote for.
Right?
Yeah.
You know,
right.
And because you need this, you need to be able to substantiate who and what I am.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, the hate mail I got for being a Trump supporter from the trans people. You have no idea. They hated me.
Kidding. Well, you're not the only one, but I don't do politics because I don't agree with playing in that system. I believe it's necessary and it's wonderful to have because it's the energy that we need to spin this ball, right? Because that's how the field works. Without the opposites, there is no, if everybody came to center, this whole ball would stop spinning.
There'd be no life.
Simulation, it would come to an end.
Yeah.
So we need right and left, good and evil.
Yeah.
There's only one thing that doesn't have an opposite. There's only one thing in the center with no opposites, and it encompasses all things, and that is love.
I thank you for saying that. Yes. And I'm 100% with you there. I get into this debate quite often with a friend of mine who's really, really into David Dawkins. And he's the one who came up with the whole chart of emotions where he scaled out through muscle testing. He assigned a number to these different emotions. So sadness, relief, guilt, all these different things going all the way up to enlightenment. So shame being the lowest number on the scale, right? And enlightenment being the highest number on the scale, and love being somewhere like closer to the high towards the top of enlightenment. But where I get into this disagreement with him is he places apathy very, very low on the realm of the scale. And to me, what makes love not have a polarity, it does have a polarity, but its polarity means the same thing. So love, if you think about it like a coin, on one side is love, which means I love you so much, I want to consume you almost. I want to just hold you and hug you and just I just want to be one with you, right? It has this right? You just want to hold on to somebody. But the inverse of that, or the duality of that, is apathy, which is I love you so much, you can go off and do anything in the world and I'm still going to love you unconditionally.
Yeah. And that's apathy, indifference, right?
Yeah.
In a way, there's also indifference because there's apathy or indifference to the events that are taking place around you.
Yeah.
That to really maintain a real loving nature is to be indifferent to many things, is to be okay with just, I realize in this world that things are happening that are horrifying for many people. I'm not ignorant to it, but I am apathetic.
Yeah.
I am indifferent. And the reason why is because I don't need to take part in absolutely every insane event because the digital world tells me to. And the thing is we're connected to more information than we've ever had before. Yeah. We know more instantly when it's happening than we've ever known ever in any time in our history that I'm aware of. And if we hang on to everything that's happening coming through that feed to us, I need to stand with Ukraine, get vaccinated or you're an evil person, or, this kind of thing, and start hanging on to all these things and creating this. And then labeling all these things with yourself, that's a lot to keep up with. And it's a lot of things to go down the path with. And these things may seem well defined, but they're not. And they may
No.
seem to be laid out as factual, but they're not. You don't know the whole truth of any of these things.
No, nothing
None of us
necessarily
do.
seems.
I don't.
No.
So why do I
No.
want to hang on to all that? Why do I want to live in that world where that's what I'm doing, is constantly reacting and emotionally responding to these things? And
Yeah.
it's tearing me apart.
Yeah, just go back and people they pine for the 50s and the olden days. You know, you want to live like that, just make your world really small and watch how amazing
Yeah.
your life becomes. You know,
Plant a garden.
you know, even the Buddha said, you know, unless compassion begins within, it's incomplete.
Exactly.
You know, and doesn't
And
mean
that's the
not to be
thing.
compassionate. I'm very compassionate. If
Of course
I come
not.
across something that I can do and I can lend compassion to somebody, then I'm going to do it. I mean, how could I not? But I'm also going to not, you know, ruin my life with thoughts and things about things that I have absolutely no control over. You know,
Exactly. If it's within my
yeah,
power to help and to be compassionate and help somebody in a genuine way, yeah, absolutely. But other than that, why am I going to tear myself apart?
yeah.
You know,
Why?
why am I going to wreck myself to
Yeah,
to 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 do nothing really, but actually create more discourse, create more
yeah.
division?
Not only that, but the true tragedy in it is that it's a necessary evil. That unless the adversary plays its role in creating this chaos, this what we would call evil, it's the act of it pulling apart, which is what's creating this experience that we're calling life. You've got this battle, this battle of good and evil, from if you're having a perspective of good and evil, but it's the pulling apart, and you know, our consciousness looks at this side and goes, oh, that's evil and this is good because we resonate with this side or we resonate with this side. But unless that pulling apart happens, unless the adversary is at battle with the good, there is no life. There's just om.
Right. Yeah, without evil you wouldn't know good. So in that way, is it possible that you could find compassion, or even like gratitude, especially gratitude
Yeah.
for the bad acting characters, the ones that are creating the discourse and the angst among people, because they're necessary in a way.
Yeah.
You know, without them, this ball wouldn't spin the way it does. You know, would we know good without their deeds? Would we know the good deeds without their bad deeds? You know, would there
Somebody
be anything?
somebody has to play the bad guy.
Right. And so they're playing the bad guy. Like when you watch a movie and you see, you know, like you're emotionally entangled in a movie
Yeah.
or a good book, you know, I don't want the actor that played the bad guy to be arrested and put in prison, right?
Yeah.
They're just playing their part. And that's really what's going on here. They're
Yeah.
just playing their part.
Yeah.
That's their job.
That's their job. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really fascinating, isn't it? And it brings us back full circle to everything. You know, it's with everything
Mhm.
that's going on. I think we had this conversation before, but it's like as this awakening is happening in me, and there's this unfolding, and it's all of it's like as I unfold, what the reason I'm unfolding is because I'm breaking down all of these former ideas I had about myself. So
Yeah.
I'm like shedding the skin of these old ideas that I had about not only myself but about the world. And getting back to what we said in the very beginning, as above, so below, so within, so without. So as I'm breaking down these boundaries and these ideas, the governments are breaking down and falling apart, right? That's all a part of this.
Mhm.
It's really part of my own personal awakening. And as I go through being transgender, suddenly the world is transgender. And as I struggle with, I don't know if I want to be transgender, then suddenly the world shifts to this, everyone's detransitioning now, and that's the new hot word. It's like, it's so beautiful to be able to see the world as a mirror to your life. It's really fascinating, and that's where it gets really fun, you know.
It is. It's interesting you talk about the government. The job of the government is governance. On engines, we have governors. On the old steam engines, they had a governor that spun around, and it had two balls on it, and they spun around. And when they spun around really fast, they spread out, right? The faster they went, the further out they spread out on the governor spinning
Okay.
around. Centrifugal force pulled them out, right? The term balls out is explaining that. That's what they're talking about when you're saying, oh, we were going balls out. That's what they're talking about. They're talking about the balls of the governor
gotcha.
spinning out. Yeah, that's what balls out means.
I didn't know that. That's funny.
Yeah. So when we talk about governance, right, and the way that they're doing things and the way that they're part of this creation, because we have governance all over the globe, I don't even know if they're fully mindful of that's what they're doing, but they're meting out the speed at which we do things, at which we iterate, in which we create, right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
So that's what governance is. It's governing the speed. It's governing the actual function of the machine.
And that governance is the boundary, right? That's the limitation, right?
And our governance right now is balls out.
Yeah, he's definitely balls out.
Yeah, well, ours too.
Yeah,
balls out, and it's crazy times.
I'm starting to think that he's starting to fake his. I'm starting to think that is he faking crazy, so that when all this stuff goes down, he can just say he's a crazy old man. Because didn't Lao Tzu do that? Right? When not Lao Tzu, but who was the guy that Mao that took over China, right? And murdered all those people, right?
Shiny happy people.
Terrible dictator, murdered 100 million people. My dog entered the room. He's scratching the carpet, but looking for a comment. He's like, "Are you going to bed yet?" But anyway, but I think Mao, to protect himself from when he thought he was going to be couped, he faked insanity or faked Alzheimer's for like the last 20 years of his life, and it was during those last 20 years that this plot to overthrow the West was created. And he literally said in a speech that he had a plot to take down the West without firing a single shot. And this is it. We're in the middle of it. This is that plot unfolding. You know, he's long dead, but fascinating, right? Fascinating.
Well, the one thing they don't realize, though, I mean, they can try that. You know, there's a lot of things that go on, but what they don't realize is in Canada and the U.S., especially the U.S., has the highest level of firearms owning citizens of any other country on the planet.
Yeah.
You know, and when you think about it, you know, like you look at the art of war, consider a lot of things. You got to consider terrain as one of them.
Yeah.
You know, it's not really easily accessed terrain, and everybody's spread out quite well across the U.S. and Canada. But yeah, maybe that's the case. I don't know, but I think there's two minds here, and I run several different scenarios. I don't just run one and try and hang on to it. There's always many that come into my mind. One is, they are that stupid or whatever they are. They are that ignorant. They are that unknowing in a way, or they are that obedient to their master, or maybe they are that cunning. You know, it's all kind of possible, but maybe it's a mixture.
This thing has been so war gamed out to such perfection. I have to think that there's an AI or something running this game. You know,
but maybe the AI is just
is not quite there. And
maybe it's there. Maybe it's always been there.
Yeah.
Maybe it's never not been there. Some people ask me, and I'm like, oh, the singularity? Yeah, it happened a long time ago in the future.
And maybe it's always been here. Yeah. Right? And let's be kept secret, or
And maybe it's not artificial. Maybe it is just the way it is. Maybe it is. There's a higher intelligence.
What if that is the Ark of the Covenant, right?
Right. Maybe that's what we just aren't aware of, or maybe we're becoming aware of. I look at what happened today in New York, the shooting in the subway, and simultaneously up on YouTube pops up Biden's new gun laws that he wants to instate.
God.
And I'm like, well, there's no mistakes there, are there? I
No.
mean, that's kind of convenient.
Yeah, it's a little too convenient. People don't understand. I think some people, I mean, obviously gun owners definitely understand, but for people who don't own a gun, for any liberals that are watching, when we think about taking on an army, I think the largest army in the world is Iran. They have 1 million man army, I believe. So like, that's a very scary number of people who are armed and fighting in a battle. But
Yeah, but
when you think about,
not
you think about
interested.
America and Canada, but if you think about in comparison to America and Canada, where at least in America, there's 2 guns for every man, woman, and child,
Yeah.
right? Suddenly you've got a 350 million man army if the government tried to do something a little bit sketchy.
Yeah.
That is such an insane number. I don't care how many drones you have. You could sit there and talk about drones all you want. But when you've got that many angry people with guns and you're talking about messing with their kids, that's not going to end too
Yeah.
well for them, not at all. And you have to really appreciate the I guess the ability for our forefathers to see that, to be able to see how powerful of an idea that is, And I know that your system's a little different up there, but they let you guys have guns.
We do. Yeah, we are firearms owners.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there are many of us, and many of us are ex-military too. We have a lot of us are ex-military up here. We all have some form of military training. And Canadians are, we hold our own. We do okay.
Canadians are like the most peaceful, loving people. So to see the Canadians so angry in that trucker thing, I was just like, wow.
You know what?
You have pissed off the wrong people.
But here's the thing. There's never been a protest where that many people got together for a common purpose and stayed in Ottawa for that length of time and kept it absolutely peaceful. Crime went down in Ottawa.
Yeah.
The homeless people were fed. The monuments were cleaned.
Snow was shoveled.
Snow was shoveled. There was no garbage on the street. People were singing and laughing. There
bouncy houses.
There were bouncy castles for the kids. I could have walked in there as a trans woman out and open, and I would have been completely safe. I went to the opening as they landed in Ottawa on that Saturday. I was in the capital of our province here in BC, in Victoria on the island, at the corresponding protest. And it was nothing but love and peace. Like I said, there may be a lot of people with something to say about trans people, but they do have something to say. My experience here in Canada, and I know there's trans people out there that are persecuted and actually murdered and things, and it's bad. It's terrible. And it happens. It's a real thing. But here in Canada, no, not really. There are things that happen, but the incidences are very, very low. And I would say they're probably below the national average in comparison to regular rates of things happening. I don't walk around in fear. I don't. And I was very welcome at that protest. Very welcome. And I was treated very well. It was about unity. So when we talk about a large protest, what happened in Canada was extremely peaceful. The reaction by the government was horrible. It was the worst thing they could have done. It was completely unfounded. There was a young woman here in Chilliwack that had donated $20. She was a young waitress with 2 kids, a single mom. Donated $20 to the Give Send Go or the GoFundMe account, and her bank account was seized for that. That's how bad this was. That's how much our government overreacted in this, and they just wow. And then to go after that and form a coalition government with the NDP to continually seize power. This is where we look at this, and I'm just like, holy smokes, yeah, we're in a bit of trouble here. We've taken a real political shift here in Canada. This is no longer the Canada I knew growing up.
Yeah.
This is I go out and I'm talking to people. There's people fleeing Canada. There's people that are unvaccinated that have to book a private flight to get out of Canada because they can't get on an airplane.
Wow.
And there's people moving out of Canada.
Yeah. We're definitely feeling it. I believe it. We're feeling it here too. I mean, we haven't gone through what you guys have gone through, but we saw what you guys went through, and we saw what the Australians went through, and we went, wow, that is some scary shit, So I don't think there's a single person here in America that's like, unless you're completely naive, is not very, very concerned about what's happening. It's like definitely a trifecta of some really cataclysmic things coming together and ahead at once,
So what happens every time the government talks about more firearms restrictions? What's the response to that? People rush out. You can't buy a gun anywhere. There's a complete run on guns, just like there was toilet paper. Do you not think they know that?
Oh, wow. Yeah. Something, you're right. Yeah.
Wars are what? They're rich man's games. Yeah. Who makes money on wars? Rich men do. They make money on both sides, right? Do you think that maybe they want a civil war? Do you think that maybe that might be the plan?
I think that they want us to. I think they want us to have a civil war. I think that's what they're trying to provoke.
Well, these people
why waste their own bullets?
Exactly, and they're all known depopulists. They all want to depopulate the earth by a dramatic amount. So, and what would be a good way to do that? What's a great way to cover up genocide?
Yeah, you guys did it to yourselves. Yeah.
That's how they did it in Bosnia and Herzegovina.
Right. It's a good point.
Yeah.
It's a very good point. Just create a civil war. Do you think that that people could be cultured enough to see through it? Like, here's the thing.
A lot of people are. Yeah.
It's like, I don't know anybody my age that has a problem. My friends are black, I don't even see it. Like, I don't even see it. They're just my friends, just like I'm sure they don't even see trans. They just see their friend. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's exactly.
And I think that anybody under the age of 40, that's definitely true. Not only is that true if you're under the age of 40, but if you're white, you probably want to be black because all of the greatest athletes are black. All of the greatest pop stars are black. It's like we've kind of grown up that way a little bit. I mean, every white kid I know wants to be a rapper and idolizes black rappers, or a black athlete. So it's funny that they're pushing this race thing so hard. I think that just shows how out of touch they are with the real human condition. I'm not to say that there's racism. I'm sure there really is some terrible things.
Of course there's racism, but it's not.
Of course.
But it's weaponized. It's not like right now.
Yeah.
The weaponized racism, if you say something and they can find an angle to oppose you by using your racist retort, right? Then they can shut you down, and they know it.
It's the new fascism.
Exactly. You're transphobic. Well, there you go. There's a way to shut you down. You're a fascist. You're a Nazi. I can shut you down by calling you these things. I can negate you. I can erase you with this. I can not only erase you, I can make sure that you don't have a chance to speak.
Do you know how many people said that to me? They would call me fascist for speaking the truth. And I'm like, I think you really need to go and look at the definition of fascism, because you telling me what to say is by definition fascism. And me speaking the truth is the antithesis of that. So it's like.
Well, I see people on Facebook, when I was on Facebook, like, I'm blah, 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 I'm Antifa, I'm this. And on their Facebook posting, I absolutely believe people should be rounded up and forced vaccinated. I'm like, how do you live with that dichotomy within yourself?
Noam Chomsky said that. Here's
right?
Like, what? I'm like, oh, God, don't even.
And that's why and I don't want to go on with memes, but that's why when you see these clown world memes or these backwards world memes, it's like, what is going on? Even Noam Chomsky is, a known anti-fascist, anti-whatever, and yet he's purporting it. He's expounding the benefits of fascism now.
Yeah.
So what's going on? Where are we at
We
here?
should be in camps.
Right?
It's like what? You're Noam Chomsky. What?
Like, come on, dude. No.
You're supposed to be brilliant. What? You're supposed to see all this. Plus, he's old enough to probably remember World War II and what happened.
Right.
Like, you know what I mean?
And Neil Young, all of his music, listening to it my whole life.
Yeah.
And then for him to be all upset about Joe Rogan and stuff on Spotify.
Neil Young is still searching for a heart of gold, unfortunately.
Right. Yeah.
He's going to be searching for a long time.
No kidding. What's interesting about him is he, from what I see is, like, I believe he suffered from polio when he was younger. That's why when you see him in the Heart of Gold video from years back when he first did it, he was sitting in a chair.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So maybe he's got some, sort of, he's remembering how awful that was, and that's coming forward in him now. Maybe,
I'm going to let Neil off. I'm going to let Neil off the hook and say that more than likely, and I'm pretty sure of this fact too. Maybe somebody had to fact check me, but I think that BlackRock, or a subsidiary of BlackRock, owns his publishing. So we were talking
he doesn't
about
own it anymore. There's
right. So it was going to mean hundreds of millions of dollars to him, like close to $300 million to him. And so when someone has that kind of over your head and they tell you to do something, even Neil Young, you got to do it. Even Neil Young is going to be like, hey, I'm a hippie guy, but $300 million.
Yeah, I got to retire somehow, I got bills to pay.
My 10 million I have in the bank right now is just not quite cutting it,
Not going to do it. I need more, Life support systems are expensive.
But still a shitty thing to do. I mean, I don't know. His whole I don't know. He ruined his whole persona. He was.
I think it sucks but I'm not going to let that go. It's just like I'm not going to let J.K. Rowling ruin Harry Potter for me, because I don't like Harry Potter anyways, and I still don't.
Yeah, same here.
Never gave a shit about Harry Potter. Just didn't.
I can't get into it. I'm sorry. I just really can't get into it. And the theft of the Philosopher's Stone and that little extra line she added in there just kind of like took it all out of context. It made people go. It made the Philosopher's Stone, which is already incredibly mysterious in its own right, but worthy of the rabbit hole to go down. It's the same thing. It's like the perversion of the cross with the crucifix. Her symbol for magic was the perversion of the Philosopher's Stone.
Yeah.
But
that's the whole thing. But what's interesting is I don't think a lot of people are really fully aware of what a lot of these symbols mean. Junvalo Melchizedek, I don't know if you know who he is.
Yeah.
I love him. He was in Japan, and he was visiting a Shinto temple, and the priests there had on their robes embroidered in golden thread Merkaba, right?
Oh, wow,
Metatron's cube. And he's like, wow, that's amazing that you guys have that. That's really amazing. They're like, yeah, it's deeply important to our religion. He's like, oh yeah, are you aware that it's blah, blah, blah? And they're like, what? They had no idea what it meant. They just knew that it was deeply significant to them.
Wow.
Right? But apparently they said that they had no idea what it meant. They were actually really fascinated when he was explaining to them what it was and how it worked within the, right?
Wow, that is fascinating. Yeah.
But that's kind of where we're at, I think, with a lot of things. I think that a lot of stuff is practiced, it's even medicine, and it's deeply important, but they're not really in a real knowing of the depth of what things are. Like, they have an idea, but they've only scratched the surface of the true meaning of what things actually are.
Yeah, well, they're looking through the lens of the material lens only, and they're not looking through anything using an existential lens. And when you do that, you get a different picture. You have to. Right. It goes back to the thesis, antithesis, synthesis, right? Like, you have to imagine it, and then imagine its opposite. So if we're imagining how to fix something in the material world, in order to fix it properly, we have to then imagine what it is, what its opposite is in the spiritual realm that we can't see. That's its opposite. But interestingly, the opposite is the material world, and the thesis is the spiritual world, and the synthesis is the spiritual world. That's the irony. It's the
Yeah.
inversion of the material world to what the truth is.
And isn't that with awakening a lot? Like there's those levels in the awakening too. Like when you first begin awakening, you start finding all these things, and they're like, whoa, and that's deeply, deeply, it rings true with you. You're not really sure how, but you're like, you find that real connection to it. And then you get a little bit of a deeper connection to it. You get a bit of a knowing, and then you get a deeper gnosis of it. And then you get a full embodiment of what it is. And you're like, whoa, but it's not just all of a sudden, bang, here it is. And now you know it. There's levels to the gnosis. There's all these levels to it.
Absolutely. I mean, we've given it away how many times in this podcast already? We've already told, if somebody hasn't woken up yet entirely, or they're just starting to waken up, we've both already said what it is several times, at least 5 or 6 times. But it doesn't make any sense to you, and B, again, this is why it's called self-realization, because what I said, when we live in a dream and it's an eternal dream, is loaded. It's such a loaded word, the word dream, right? And you go, no, my dreams are not what life is. It's very, very different. But I'm telling you, there's no difference. They're exactly the same. But that is such an inconceivable idea to you if you're just waking up, that it just doesn't register, it doesn't resonate. And so you instantly reject it, because that understanding is ego death, or very close to what ego death is. And the ego does not like that. So the ego is going to say, nope, that's not it. That's ridiculous. That's preposterous. That's the most ridiculous thing possible. That can't be what it is. And you're going to look the other way. But what I'm describing is what the Zen Buddhists would it's a Zen teaching called Satsang, which is essentially, you can wade yourself into the water of the eternal deep, you wade yourself into the water of enlightenment, and you can go in inch by inch. But Satsang is just to throw you into the deep end and see if you can swim. That's what that is. It's nothing's real. Splash. Let's see if you can swim with that. Yeah. And most people can't. I know I couldn't when I first was going.
It's frightening.
It was terrifying. First time I ever had that gnosis was, without question, the most terrifying experience of my life. Without question, the most terrifying experience of my life by 1,000. It was an hours long. What seemed like it was an hours long in the material world, and probably what seemed like millions of years in my mental world of just drowning in my own reality. It was terrible. It was terrible. Yeah. But the gnosis afterwards was like, it's like any good hard lesson, when you're going through it, it's awful. But the gnosis that comes after it, the wisdom that comes from that terrible experience, is priceless. It changes your life forever. It's magical. Yeah. Yeah, again, right?
Stretched. It is so uncomfortable.
Yeah, it really is.
It is unpleasant. It is deeply horrifying. It's nihilistic. It's desperate. It is not a pleasant in any way. I do not like it.
Yeah.
But what I have to learn is to love it, and to allow it, and to not only that, but just find joy in it, because it means that there's growth.
Yeah, totally. And for the people who are just beginning your journey, don't get freaked out by what I say and just say, oh, this is all hogwash, and go the other way. You can get there step by step, and just wading through the water gently and taking it on as you can process it, and don't try to force it. Just, I would say that there's probably not free will, and you can't force anything anyway. But just it's kind of like we were talking about the seed popping before. Let the seed pop and let the plant just grow. You can water it by doing the work, and you can nurture it by doing the work. But it's only going to grow as fast as it's going to grow. And then one day it's a tree, and you're like, holy shit, I'm this gigantic tree. How amazing is this? It's the analogy anyway, as I see it. Yeah. Well, we've been. Go ahead. What?
A lot of
You're
people think awakening is this sort of wonderful, blossoming, instant experience, and that's part of it. But there's everything to it. It's very uncomfortable. It's also beautiful. It's also sometimes it just sucks.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's
It is.
it's awakening. It's not awakened.
Right. It's awakening. Yeah. Yeah. Forever. And that's the beautiful part. That's the no death in it. That's the part that there is no death. You're awakening forever.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll never, ever, ever get to the end because you can never contain it. Ever.
There's no end to the equation.
There's no end to the equation of infinity.
Right.
It goes forever and ever and ever and ever.
It's a mathematical certainty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What a beautiful beautiful. What a beautiful just everything just to think about it and how beautiful to even have this conversation with somebody. It's amazing.
Yeah. It's been really
Everybody,
good for me to be able to talk to you tonight.
Oh, likewise. I think I've only done a few of these so far, and each time I do them, it just really resonates. I'm just like, wow, this is the conversation I know I'm dying to watch on YouTube. And if I'm dying to watch this on YouTube, I know other people are dying to watch this on YouTube. This is the real conversation, I think. This is the only thing that's relevant because it affects every aspect of life. This balance.
And that,
Yeah.
It's like the questions. Who are we? Why are we here? What's going on? What is this all about?
Yeah. Yeah. All of it. It's an enigma. It's a mystery wrapped in an enigma, as Oliver Stone says, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we've been on here for 2 hours, which is officially the longest broadcast I've done so far. So I'm really happy about that. That's awesome. And I would love to have you on again. Would you be up for that?
Absolutely. I'm up for it. Yeah.
Awesome. That'd be great. I think that we're definitely simpatico on our way of seeing things. And we're going through such a similar experience during such incredibly uncertain times. It's just it's so refreshing and nice to have someone as beautiful and wonderful as you to talk with and as wise as you are. It makes it nice and comforting for me. So thank you for coming on the show. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And I look forward to all of our conversations on and off the air. It's it's great. It's great.
Yeah, we've had some pretty interesting conversations. It's interesting.
Definitely.
I always come away with more. I always come away with something that leaves me thinking again. So thank you for that.
Oh, thank you too. You had me going on the Lilith thing. Last time we spoke, you got into such detail about it, and I was just like, oh my God, that is so mind-blowing. When you get into the sacred geometry of it, when you get into the sacred geometry of that story, that is just there's something very spectacular there that you stumbled into. It's amazing. It really is. I'm not even able to really fully process it, honestly. But I could tell there's something really spectacular there.
When you start drawing sacred geometry, when you start drawing it for yourself, that brings on another level of awakening I could have never imagined before I did it. There's a gnosis in that. There is something that happens when you do that. You become closer to creation and closer to source, and in a lot of ways, it's something. It's quite an experience.
I'm going to have to really get into doing that. I'm a huge fan of Robert Edward Grant. So if you're into this conversation, you should definitely check out Robert Edward Grant. But he's I would definitely say as smart as the Ken Wheeler guy or smarter. He's definitely up there in his brilliant sense of brilliance and multi-billionaires from in the crypto world of designing security systems using music, uses musical locks, and he's inspired from Willy Wonka.
That's interesting.
Yeah, so he he is really into all of this in a huge way, and he's working on a thesis to unify light, shape, sound, and smell, like all the senses that we have, into one single mathematical formula. And he seems to be so close,
Oh, it's
so
doable.
close. It's totally doable.
doable. Because everything is frequency. So yeah.
He's always talking about drawing. He's like, you have to sit down and draw these things. You have to draw the shapes to really that's when it starts to click, It's pretty interesting.
He's absolutely right. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So a lot of his programs are just him drawing, and he's just showing like the relationships as he's drawing, and it's just fantastically interesting to watch. Really interesting. Well, Paige, thank you very much for coming on here. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Len.
And I look forward to doing this again. I love you, and so good to see you again.
Okay.
Yeah, take care and have a beautiful night and stay safe. And I'll see you soon.
Let's do this again soon.
I look forward to it. Take care.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Night.
Bye-bye.
Bye.